Hey, what's going on?
Hi friends!
Hey y'all.
Hey there!
Hello from UNC Greensboro.
Well, we really wish we could personally welcome you to our beautiful campus today.
We're so glad you're here with us virtually.
During this year's open house, there are a ton of opportunities to connect with us.
We have more than 20 info sessions lined up across 3 weeks, all streamed live on our website.
You'll hear from admissions and financial aid staff,
Advisors, professors, and students.
Maybe you'll even see this familiar face.
You can also interact with the panelists in each session by texting us your questions and we'll answer them in real time.
Take some time to explore our website for even more information, like a personalized view book, campus tour signups, and of course, a link to apply.
UNCG is a really special place, and we hope you get to see a glimpse of that during this year's open house.
We're crossing our fingers that you'll get to meet with us face to face sometime really soon. Until then,
mask up,
wash your hands,
and go Spartans!
And go Spartans.
Go Spartans.
Go Spartans.
And go Spartans.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to UNCG's virtual fall open house. My name is Caleb Cuthbertson, and I serve as one of the first-year recruitment staff here in our Office of Undergraduate Admissions. Tonight, we're going to be talking with my dear friend, Miss Deborah Slade, about financial aid and scholarships here at UNCG. So in just a second, you'll see a number at the bottom of the screen. You could text that number with any questions that you have in reference to financial aid, and I will be sure to get those to Miss Deborah Slade to answer for you. So, Miss Deborah Slade, can you introduce yourself for us?
Very good, and it's good to talk with you, Caleb. Yes, my name is Deborah Slade. I'm the Assistant Director for Outreach in the UNCG Financial Aid Office, and I'm so glad to be able to talk with you all tonight.
We are so happy to have you here with us tonight. Now, I know you have a little bit of information you want to share with us, so I'm going to allow you to take it away with that PowerPoint.
All right, yes, I do have a few things I wanted to go over before we get started with the question and answer section, because I think sometimes we just have a lot of questions. We may not know how to direct them, and this will give us a little bit of background as well as a way to formulate some questions. So we're going to talk about higher ed, understanding the cost, and how to pay. So let's go ahead and get started. Probably the most important question that people have is, what do they have to pay? How much does it cost? Well, in financial aid, there are lots of terminology that may seem a little confusing, and one of it we find is the cost of attendance. A lot of times people get this confused with the actual bill, but it's not. This is a way for you to budget how much you might need to spend, and just a way to keep a handle on what resources are going to be necessary to make sure that you're managing and that you're covering all of your expenses. So first out, you have your tuition and fees, which comes about as a result of registering for classes. If you're planning to live on campus, you'll be charged for a dorm room and a meal plan. That's called room and board. There are some other costs that come along with going to college, books and supplies. We definitely encourage you to buy those books. You also have transportation. Now, this is not a charge for transportation across campus. This is a charge, or rather an expense that you might have as you navigate back and forth home during weekend breaks, or if you're a commuter student, if you're transporting yourself back and forth to campus. So those are the kinds of things that we consider under transportation. And the personal and miscellaneous expenses come about as a way of covering soap, toothpaste, linens for the dorm, those kinds of things. I mentioned if you are living on campus, you'll have a charge for a dorm room and a meal plan. If you live off campus, you still want to make sure that you're covering your housing expenses. So if you're renting an apartment or a room or sharing space with someone that will have you paying rent or paying a fee to stay there, then we want to make sure that you have that factored into your budget, as well as your food costs. So that is also covered. Now, there are some ways to pay that we want to cover. Grants and scholarships, of course, everybody wants those. That's free money. Loans, work study, that's considered self-help aid. For example, loans you have to repay, and I'm going to go into just a tad more detail on the loans in just a bit. And then you have family savings. So if you've been fortunate enough to put aside a little bit of money for college, or maybe set up a college savings plan, this is the time to bust that piggy bank open and start utilizing those funds. Let's dive into the source of funds. Federal government is probably the largest source of aid for students going to college. Next up would be state aid programs that are available for you. And depending on your state of residence, that may be in the form of state funded grants or other opportunities. There are also institutional funds. For example, the university would be offering different types of scholarship and grant funds for you. Then there are local organizations that might also provide some funding. These you'll have to search out, and a good source to find those would be your college advisor, your college counsel, your high school counselor, that will have information gathered for you to start looking through. And this is a really good time to start looking at that kind of information, depending on whether you're planning to enroll in college for next fall, or if you're planning 2 years out. It's always a good idea to get an early start on looking for those kinds of sources so that you can make sure that you're meeting all of the deadlines. And we already talked a little bit about the college savings plans. CFNC of North Carolina, CFNC.org, which is College Foundation of North Carolina, has on their website information about the 529 plan that's available for North Carolina residents. So I encourage you to look at that information as another way of gathering resources for college education. So I mentioned that we were going to go into a little bit more detail on some of the federal programs. First up is the federal Pell Grant. And I know that a lot of people have heard of this. This is a need-based program that a lot of students qualify for. It is free money that does not have to be repaid. It's paid out based on how your level of enrollment. So if you're a full-time student, you get the full allocation of that grant. If you're less than full-time, then the grant is prorated. Federal Work Study is an opportunity to earn money while you're studying. It does not have to be repaid, but you do earn a paycheck for the hours that you work. And that's another good way of taking care of some of those personal expenses and some of those things that may not be covered by your grants and scholarships, and you, as I said, you will get a paycheck for those hours worked. So that's money that you can have all along. And then we have our loan programs. The subsidized and unsubsidized loans are for the student, and those, unfortunately, they're loans, so they do have to be repaid. The PLUS loan is the parent loan for undergraduate students, and that is a credit-based loan that parents would apply for in the parent's name. And don't worry about this. We have lots of information on these things, and we are more than happy to go into detail, but I just wanted to give you an overview at this point, just so you have an idea of what kinds of things are available. As you look for these different types of aid, you want to start out with the free application for federal aid as your main application. This application is required for all federal aid, for a lot of state aid programs, and for a lot of institutional funds. It is open right now for the next academic year. And if I move my head out of the way, let's go this way. January 15th is the priority filing window. October 1st to January 15th is a priority filing window for Uncg. That means that students who file within that time frame are more likely to get the aid that they're eligible for before all of the funds are depleted. It's very important to make sure that you're filing early, that you're in line to get the funds that you're eligible for, because even if you're eligible and the money's run out, we wouldn't have any other recourse. So we want to encourage you to get that done early. There are state aid programs that may also be required, that may also require the Fafsa. We definitely want you to check that out. I mentioned earlier, CFNC.org. That has the listing of state programs for North Carolina residents. So I do encourage you to check that website out so that you can make sure that you're covering all of your bases. The Residency Determination is also listed as a link on CFNC.org. And this is important because if you don't qualify for North Carolina residency for tuition purposes, you may not be able to be eligible for a lot of the state aid programs. So it's very important that you don't skip that residency requirement as you're going through the admissions process. So make sure you do that, and that will assure that you are being considered for all of the federal and state aid that you're eligible for, because there's some, and also institutional aid, because there's some institutional aid that has residency requirements. I mentioned earlier that some of the local scholarships could be found through your high school counselor or your college advisor. Typically, they will garner information and post it either on a website or maybe send out a periodic newsletter for you. I encourage you to make sure that you're following through on all of that information. It is vitally important that you stay on top of that. Create a file that you put aside for all of that scholarship information so that you can go back and go through it and it doesn't get mixed in with all of your other mail. Create a separate email address for those kinds of things as well, so that you can make sure that you're not missing out on anything and you have a dedicated space for that kind of information. School and institutional aid is available for students who are attending different schools, and especially if you're coming to UNCG, we want you to make sure that you complete your admissions application. And I know our admissions counselors have been very good about giving you this information, but I just want to reiterate, make sure that you complete the entire admissions application, including the essay portion, to qualify for merit-based scholarships at UNCG. Now, there's the UNCG Guarantee Program, which is a program for high achieving students who have need. And this is a really good program because it strives to reduce or minimize the amount of loans that students may need to borrow through their academic career. So I encourage you to look at their website, determine whether or not you might meet the requirements, or at least send in the interest survey, and they'll do the work for you and letting you know whether or not you are eligible to apply for the program. But I do encourage you to do that. This is not just financial aid, or it's not just money. There's also an opportunity to network, to have some enhanced academic support. It's a very good program, and we do encourage you to apply for that. So if you need more information, there are some websites that are handy. Financial aid office website, we encourage you to utilize the information that we provided for you. Again, the UNCG Guarantee website, cfnc.org, studentaid.gov is where you're going to start the Fafsa application process. And that site has a lot of information on all of the federal aid programs, assistance with the Fafsa, definitions, explanations, just a wealth of information there. And as you're completing the Fafsa, when you get started, if you have questions while you're in the application, you can dial the toll-free number 1-800-4FED-8 and get help with your Fafsa application. I mentioned doing some scholarship searches. So there are private scholarship searches all over the place. Now, these that I have listed here can be found on our website. So if you go to the financial aid website and look for online scholarship searches or outside scholarships, you'll find links to these searches. And these are free. Now, they don't promise or guarantee a scholarship. They will provide the information about particular scholarships. You'll put some information in about your particular major that you're going to pursue, or hobbies or interests, and they will match you with scholarships that you fit the criteria for. It will be up to you to follow through with the application and making sure that you meet the deadlines and the qualifications for those scholarships. We invite you to connect with us. Our phone number is 336-334-5702, and we're on the phones 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. You can also email us at fenaid@uncg.edu if you have any questions. And we invite you to follow us on social media so that you can figure out what's going on with the office. We have a couple things coming up this week and next week. Oh, by the way, don't forget our chatbot mini. So we want you to make sure that you can also get questions even when our office is not open. You can go on to our website. Our chatbot mini will pop up. If you have a question, you can ask. If Minnie does not have the answer, she'll give the opportunity to email the office, and then we can make sure that we get your question answered. As I mentioned, we have some Fafsa workshops coming up in the next couple of weeks. So every Thursday in October, we're doing Money Matters FAFSA 101. So if you have questions about the FAFSA, we invite you to join us on our Facebook Live page and ask your questions. Each week we cover a different topic. So this Thursday, we're going to talk about the Irs Data Retrieval tool, going through verification and special circumstances. So we invite you to join us on Thursday, so that we can get your questions answered. So I am done with my presentation. So I hope I've sparked your imagination, given you some information or some basis for some questions. I hope they're coming in fast and furiously, because that's what we want. We want to make sure that you get all the information that you need. So what you got for me, Caleb?
Yes, so we definitely want to get your questions answered this evening. So be sure to use the texting number that's here on the bottom of the screen and send those in to us. While they're sending those questions in, Ms. Deborah, I do have a couple questions based off of your presentation. So my first one is for FAFSA. Do you have to pay for that, or is that a free resource for students to complete?
Ooh, yeah, that's a really good question, Caleb. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So the very first word is a giveaway. It is a free application. You do not have to pay to complete that. You don't have to pay anybody to do it for you. There's lots of help available. As I mentioned before, we're doing workshops and sessions on the FAFSA. Our office is open to answer questions for you. So we want to make sure that you do get all of your answers there. We're going to be back here next Monday with more questions about financial aid. So we invite you to come back to that session. And anytime that you have any concerns about how to do the application, check with your high school. There are lots of high schools are doing FAFSA sessions and workshop sessions and virtual open sessions. So there's so much free help available. You do not need to pay anybody to do it. And the FAFSA has been streamlined so that it's a lot easier, it's a lot faster to complete. They're using what's called skip logic, meaning when you go on and answer a question, you will be presented questions based on your answers to certain questions. So a lot of times you hear people say, oh, it's so hard, there's so many questions, like 100 questions, where you may only get 25 questions. I'm oversimplifying. But in any case, the FAFSA questions that you are presented will be based on your particular situation and the way you answer those questions. So do not pay to have that done. You can do it. We have faith in you.
So a follow-up to the question about how you are stating, depending on how you answer the questions, do you have any tips or advice for students and family going through and completing their FAFSA for making sure that it's accurate and accurate?
Yes, definitely. Probably the most important tip to remember is, first of all, make sure you complete and do the FSA ID. That is a username and password. It's the Federal Student Aid ID that is required to log in and sign the FAFSA electronically. Now, both parent and student would need this, and you would need to have your own separate FSA ID. So having said that, when you go to the FAFSA website and click on Start Here, students, you would enter your FSA ID to start the process. Parents, you would not enter yours until you get to the parent section where you would enter your ID to submit it as your signature. That's one of the things that we find sometimes people get derailed. Parents will log in with their FSA ID, start the FAFSA, but it's not the student's FAFSA, it's the parent's FAFSA at that point. The other tip that I would pass along is to make sure that you're reading the questions and the directions and the definitions and understanding who the questions are directed to. The very beginning of the FAFSA is directed to the student. So all of that demographic information, name, social security number, date of birth, is related to the student. So all of those questions have to be answered from the student's perspective. So parents, we do advise you and encourage you to help your student complete the FAFSA, but make sure that when you're looking at those student section questions that the student is answering those. And make sure that when you get to the tax and income and asset information, that you're entering those numbers carefully. Do not use decimals with the two decimals and the decimal and the two zeros on the end. The FAFSA does not take decimal numbers, so just use whole numbers. I also encourage you to use the Irs Data Retrieval tool. This is a mechanism to allow you to transfer your tax information directly from the IRS database into the FAFSA. And that makes sure that it's entered correctly, directly from your tax information, and it's secure because that information is not revealed. So that's another piece that we encourage you to do. So it's really important to do that. And then just ask questions if you have something that doesn't make sense, or you don't understand, or you're not quite sure how to answer. Please, please, please ask those questions. We're happy to get those. We don't mind answering those questions. We would rather answer them as you are completing the FAFSA than have you complete it incorrectly or miss out on something, and then later, months later, find out, oh, we've made an error, having to go through those corrections. So yeah, ask questions.
Awesome. So the scholarships that are awarded to students, are those renewable?
That depends. And you're going to find that that's the answer to a lot of financial aid questions. It depends. There are some scholarships that are renewable, and in the scholarship notification, it should spell that out directly if it is a renewable scholarship and for how long, the term. So it will tell you if it's renewable for 2 years or for 4 years and for how many semesters. In most cases, scholarships are not. You would need to reapply in most cases each year for scholarships. Some scholarships are one time only. And again, the scholarship information will spell that out. It will tell you if this is a one-time award, if it's renewable, or if you can apply again in another academic year to get the scholarship again. So it's very important to read those scholarship directions and eligibility requirements and the criteria before you start out so that you have a good understanding. And if it's not clear, here again, ask questions. Ask the donor, send an email or call if there's a phone number. In many cases, the scholarships that you see posted on the financial aid websites will again have information. Now, the financial aid office at Uncg has, we don't have a listing of all of the scholarships. Because for most of those, you will just use the FAFSA, and then we will do a lot of the awarding on the back end. As a continuing student, we have a scholarship system that you would log into, a portal to apply for scholarships. That would only happen once you've matriculated and you're moved into your sophomore year, so you can start applying for those scholarships through that mechanism. For incoming students, the best option is to make sure you complete your admissions application by December 1st, complete the essay, and that will get you consideration for the Blue and Gold Scholarship Program and maybe some other scholarships that are being offered as well. And then again, check with your department. There's some departments that have scholarships that are based on performance or other abilities, so they would have a different application criteria. So make sure you're asking a lot of questions.
Is there an estimated range of merit scholarships?
Well, I would probably have to defer that to the admissions office and direct them to the admissions website. The ranges vary. There's some that are that cover full tuition of fees and room and board. There are others that are $1,000 to $2,000. So it differs based on the scholarship program. So please make sure to navigate over to the admissions website, look under cost and aid, and you'll find a listing of the scholarships there and more information there.
And speaking of the merit-based aid that comes from our office, is the only way to be eligible for that to complete the application and the essay?
That is correct. So you definitely need to make sure you complete that admissions application in full and complete the essay and submit that before December 1st so that you will be considered for those scholarships. And those applications would be reviewed by the admissions office staff. So we would get notified when you're awarded the scholarship. So they send that information after they've made the selection and notified the student. So we get the information and we add that into their overall financial aid award. So that means that a student may have a merit scholarship from the Blue and Gold program. They may have federal aid, they may have state aid, and they may have some other institutional aid. So they may have a number of different sources included in their financial aid packet. But the main application procedure for the merit scholarships is through the admissions application and essay. So what else you got, Caleb? Any other questions coming in?
There are some other questions coming in. So
Yay.
another question that came in is, due to COVID-19 pandemic, my family's financial circumstances changed. Are you able to reapply for aid based off of big financial changes?
Well, we're getting that question a lot. And the answer is you don't have to reapply. Do the FAFSA, answer the questions as they are asked. Now, for students who are going to be entering for fall of 2021, the 2021-2022 FAFSA opened on October 1st. The tax and income information that's going to be requested is from tax year 2019. So yeah, that was last year. So go ahead and enter that information. Once you've done that and you've completed the FAFSA, then send a letter or an email to the financial aid office explaining your situation. And what we will send you information on how to go through that process. Excuse me. Don't do it right now because we haven't started to pull in that information. But once we start pulling in information, we'll start probably near the end of October, mid-November. Our team will start to review FAFSA data for next year, and we won't start sending out financial aid awards. So don't panic. We won't be starting that until March of next year, because we have a lot of things that have to go into place before that. But if you do have a situation that's not being adequately or accurately reflected in your FAFSA data, just let us know. And we will work with you to see what can be done. If there are adjustments that can be made to your FAFSA data, we will definitely investigate that and help you map out the best course of action, let you know what your options may be for those particular situations. So let us know what's going on, but don't adjust your FAFSA. Complete the FAFSA based on the questions that are asked, answer them just like they are asking, and provide that information, and then make sure that it's accurate and complete. And then we will be able to compare that. And that's what we need, because we do need an accurate and complete FAFSA in order to make an adjustment or to make a comparison. So just let us know what's going on. We'll help you out.
Awesome. So I know in your presentation, you talked a little bit about indirect expenses versus the direct expenses. So this question kind of aligns with that in reference to living off campus. So with students that live off campus, does their aid amount change based off of that status?
Well, the aid is based on a number of factors: financial need, cost of attendance, because the cost of attendance is an estimate of all of the expenses, and that includes living expenses either on campus or off campus. So the student's cost of attendance is what drives the total amount of financial aid that they'll get. And there are allocations or set-asides or whatever you want to call them, or line items designated for housing and for meals, room and board. So if your student is living off campus and they're awarded aid, the aid is not contingent on whether they live on campus or not. And I think that may be the question. So if a student tells us first that they're going to be living on campus and then they decide to live off campus, get an apartment, well, we're not going to adjust their aid. We're not going to reduce it or anything like that. So that's to alleviate that fear. We don't require that you live one place or the other. As I said, our budget is set up based on those parameters, but there's very little difference between a student living on campus and living off campus in the total amount of the cost of attendance. I think it's maybe a $300 difference. And that comes in because we know that students who live off campus may have higher commuting costs or transportation costs. So that little allocation is a little bit more. But again, the amount that you're going to pay directly to the university is the driving force on whether you're going to have enough to cover your bill. We know that it's important to cover those off-campus expenses as well. But no, aid is not reduced if you live off campus. We don't make any of those kinds of blanket adjustments. We just award you based on, if you tell us on your Fafsa that you're going to be on campus or off campus, the system sets up a cost of attendance based on those factors, and then you get an award based on that. Hope I answered that.
Yeah, you did a great job answering that. So another question that can kind of come off of that one, based off of the award, if my estimated bill is cheaper than the award that I'm offered, do I have to accept the entire award, especially if it's related to student loans?
Ooh, excellent question. I'm so glad that came up. That is, no, you do not. And we definitely encourage you to manage make a budget, manage your budget. Take a look at what your direct costs are. And as I said, the cost of attendance is an estimate, and you can use that to guide your decisions. So yes, if you're offered more financial aid than you need for your bill, and part of that is in the form of student loans, you do not have to accept the student loans, or you do not have to accept the full amount. So always take the free money first, and then decide how much more you might need. You may find that you don't need to take the loan because maybe the difference is so small that you can use either a payment plan, or maybe you have set aside some savings or 529 that can cover that. Or maybe you're getting an outside scholarship or a private scholarship that can cover that difference. So use the loans very, very sparingly. Be very cautious. Crunch the numbers. We have a bill estimator on our website that gives you an idea of what your direct costs, and those are costs that are paid directly to the university, might be. Now, direct costs, as I mentioned before, is tuition and fees, a dorm and meal plan if you're living on campus. If you're living off campus, you're only going to get charged for tuition and fees. Or if you bring a car on campus, you will have a parking permit. If you are enrolled at least half time, you have to have health insurance. Now that can come in the form of your own health insurance coverage, or you can use the university insurance, and that charge will appear on your bill. So take a look at all of those factors, and then when you get your financial aid award, then compare. And if you do find that you don't need to borrow the money, you don't have to. And I know we also get this question, if I turn down the loan at the beginning of the semester, does that mean I can't get it later if I need it? Not at all. It means if you decline it at the beginning, as long as it's within that same academic year, you can request that loan or a portion of it for the rest of the academic year.
Thank you. So I do want to remind our guests that we are answering questions live. So if you have any, feel free to text the number that's at the lower portion of the screen with your questions, and we will answer them. So the next question is in relation to certain majors. So for students that are within specific majors, are there scholarships that they can apply for?
Yes, actually, as an incoming student, some of those are covered under the blue and gold. It's never a bad idea to reach out to your individual department to find out if there is a separate application for any scholarships that they offer. So we do encourage that. But yeah, a lot of times there will be scholarships that are tied to a particular major. Music is one that comes to mind, and nursing. So those departments have scholarships that are just for students within that program. Now, when we say institutional funds, there are some general scholarships that our office manages that may not be tied to a particular major. They may be tied to a county, a residence, or maybe typically it's a county, or maybe not necessarily a hobby, a particular affiliation. So those may not require a major, a particular major, but it's always a good idea to check with that particular department. If you're undecided, because I can hear some of the students out there who are undecided, like, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to major in. That's okay. As I said before, there are lots of general scholarships that are available, and you don't have to declare a major. If you declared a major and you get a scholarship and then you change your major, of course, you may not be able to keep that if it's required that you be in that program. But going in, yeah, there are some scholarships that are tied to a major. So again, reach out to that department to make sure that you are not missing out on anything and that you do have information on the application procedures and what's required.
In reference to the dependent student verification worksheet, what exactly is that, and do I need to fill it out?
The dependent verification worksheet is part of the documentation that's requested when a student's file is selected for verification. And we won't know that until after the student has completed the Fafsa and we get it back. And there will be a notation on within the Fafsa data that the federal government wants us to verify the information on the Fafsa. If that happens with your student, we will send you a notice send the student a notice that says your file's been selected. Here are the forms you need to complete. And that the dependent student verification form would be one of the forms that would be required to be completed, but only if the file is selected for verification. So don't send it to us if we have not requested it. Only send information that we specifically request. So not everyone has to do that. It's only the files that get selected for verification.
Students that are coming on an athletic scholarship, do they have the same chances and same eligibility to apply for academic scholarships?
Yes, and yes, they do. However, the NCAA ruling is a little different in how student athletes get aid. They cannot go, there are some combinations that we have to review and make sure that they're meeting the NCAA requirements. But typically, yeah, students can have a variety of different sources of aid. They're required to stay within their budget and within the need requirements. So if you have more detailed questions about it, if you're a student athlete and you're considering Uncg, definitely reach out to our compliance office. Tyrone Joyner in the financial aid office is our NCAA compliance officer for our office. The athletic department has compliance officers, and also just in general. So give us a call if you're definitely considering that. We have to get the information in, we have to get your FAFSA in to make sure that, other aid that you're going to, that you can qualify for other aid. If you don't do a FAFSA and you get the athletic scholarship and outside scholarships, I think, again, there are some parameters and we'd have to see what's going on with your particular file. But typically, yeah, you can have a variety of things, but there are, again, within the policies.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. Does UNCG practice need blind admissions? And will applying for financial aid hurt my chances of being admitted?
Not at all. Not at all. The admissions office helps us in encouraging students to apply for aid because we want you to be able to come. We want you to be able to afford to come. So no, applying for aid does not in any way impact your chances of being admitted. We don't, admissions are not based on it. Now, I don't work in the admissions office, but I know they don't do that. Typically, we work together to encourage students to apply. There's so many, I was doing an interview a few weeks ago, and one of the topics that came up was why people don't apply for aid and why is it important that they do apply. And one of the reasons that people don't apply is they think, first of all, they won't qualify, or they think maybe the application is too hard. But studies have shown that each year, billions, and I mean billions with a B, billions of dollars in scholarship money is left unclaimed because people have not completed just a basic FAFSA application. And that's in the form of federal, state, and institutional funds. So it is vitally important that you do that. Don't feel like, if I need money, I may not get in. UNCG loves a variety of students. We are the most diverse university ever. So we want people from all walks, we want everybody. We want a variety of people to interact and to enrich our campus. So it doesn't matter because everybody has something to bring. Everybody has something to bring to the table. Everybody is important. It doesn't matter your economic status. You have something to offer UNCG, and we want to have that out on our campus. You will enrich us regardless of your academic status. So don't let that be a barrier to applying. Go ahead and apply for admissions and apply for financial aid. Now, you do have to be admitted before you get financial aid. So just remember that, but you don't have to be admitted in order to apply. So, I mean, that sounds a little backward, but you can do the FAFSA right now, even before you fill out an admissions application. Once you've been admitted, then we can tell you how much financial aid you can get. So in that sense, they don't really even know whether or not you have money. So apply for both.
Yes. So you kind of covered this question, but just to reiterate, because this is a little bit different. You say you don't need to be admitted, but do you need to commit to UNCG before you receive your award letter? And if not, when will you receive the award letter?
We start awarding students usually early March, mid-March. So a lot of students haven't made that commitment yet. Typically, May 1st is the commitment deadline or the date that we, confirmation date or whatever you want to call it. But we don't require that to offer you financial aid. We just require that you be admitted so that we can make sure that, we can get those awards out. Because if we waited until May till you commit before we offer you financial aid, we may not have money if we wait. So that's why we award on a first come, first served basis based on your eligibility for the aid. We will, if you decide not to attend, then those funds come off and we offer those funds to another student who is coming or who has been admitted. But no, we don't require that you commit before we submit or before we offer you financial aid. We just require that you be admitted.
Awesome. So we're out of questions from the audience. I have a few in my sleeve that I want to pull out for you and pick your brain, Miss Deborah. I promise they won't be too difficult. But I do want to remind our guests that if they want to ask questions, we have a few more moments. The text number is at the bottom of the screen, and you can send in your questions to us. So one of my questions for you is if the high school student has received a scholarship or from the school or from an outside source. So I know you mentioned that was one of the forms of financial aid. How would they apply that to their bill? How should they submit that to the school?
Excellent. And I hope you have lots of them. I hope you have a whole bag full of checks to send us. First of all, we want you to make sure that your donor has the information on which schools you're attending. So let your donor know that you're going to be attending UNCG. And your donor would send that check to the financial aid office at UNCG, and then we would make sure that it gets applied to your bill. Make sure your donor tells us if the check that they sent us is for the academic year, or if this is the first check for that semester and they're going to send another one for the next semester. But yeah, you would be able to utilize those funds directly on your bill. And here's the neat thing about this. All of the money that you gather from an outside source, all of that gets applied to your bill. You don't have to worry about paying any of that back. So I encourage you to go ahead and beat the bushes, get as much outside sources as you can. Again, make sure that your donor knows that you're attending UNCG. Provide them with your UNCG ID. So when you get admitted or when you complete your FAFSA and we get your information, you will be assigned a UNCG ID. It's a 9-digit number, and we won't use your social security number. So give your donor, when they award you the scholarship, make sure you tell them, I'm going to UNCG. Here's my UNCG ID number. Please send this check to the financial aid office at UNCG. And as we get into that process, there are instructions on our website on how to make sure that your donor gets that information to us. But we definitely want you to get as much outside aid as possible. So don't worry about how that. Now, if the donor gives you the check, which typically they don't, typically they send that to the school. If they give you the check, send that to our office so that we can make sure you get full accounting for that, full credit for that. One of the reasons why we want you to do that is because when you get your classes set up and you register for classes, you will also get a bill for the courses. If you are expecting a check or expecting financial aid or a scholarship, the bill is due before any of that money actually hits your account. So if we know that you're getting it, you can get credit for it. So is it vitally important to go ahead and tell us that your donor has given you the scholarship? Send us the notification that you get from the donor. We can add that to your financial aid award as pending aid. And that will help offset some of the costs that you may have to pay out of pocket. Because remember, we talked about whether or not you would need to borrow money. If you have a scholarship that can cover the rest of your bill, but if we don't know about it, we're still going to send you a bill for that difference. But if we know that you're getting a scholarship, then we can give you credit for it. And then once the donor sends the check, then that will cover the bill. Or if they give you the check, then you can send that to our office to make sure it covers the bill. So I think that hopefully that covers that. If again, I just keep saying this, if you have questions about any of this, please give us a call or send us an email. We will be so happy to answer that for you and make sure you're on the right track. We don't want you confused. We want to make sure that you're doing everything on time and on target so that you can have a smooth transition into your UNCG experience.
As far as work study positions go and being eligible for that, so I know that comes from the FAFSA, and once you're deemed eligible, how does a student go about finding those work study jobs on campus?
Our office coordinates with the Student Employment Office, and that's housed with the Office of Professional, oh dear, I knew I was going to get that wrong. Career and Professional Development. They have a database of work study jobs as well as non-work study jobs. Okay. So once a student has been offered work study, first of all, the student will tell us whether or not they want to accept it and whether or not they want to work. Once they've done that, they'll be directed to do a search for a job on the database Handshake to find a position. And then you apply just like you would for a part-time job. The supervisor or the department may require a resume. They may have a pre-application or some type of mechanism for you to make your interests known. And you'll just follow those instructions as they've laid those out. And then they'll make a decision and notify you as to whether you're hired, and you get assigned to that department. There are opportunities also to work off campus. So you can have a community-based experience. Those positions are also listed within that database, and you just pretty much get to choose, and you can decide where you'd like to work. This is very important. So if you want to work within your department, you can look to see how many options or how many openings your department has for work study. Make sure you apply for those. That's a great opportunity to get to know the people in your department, your professors, other instructors, staff members within the department. You can build up a networking opportunity there. If you want to do something outside your major, maybe work in a financial aid office, who knows, that could lead to a career doing what I do here. Or somewhere else on campus, maybe the bookstore, maybe the Elliott University Center. So there are a number of different opportunities to work on campus in the work study program. If you're not offered work study, there are also non-work study positions. So there's still opportunities to work if you don't get offered work study. So don't feel like you're left out if it doesn't appear on your award letter. And that's where you would find out. It would appear on your award letter. You have the opportunity to either accept it or decline it. If you did not get offered work study and you would like to be considered, again, you can send us an email. We have, most of the time, every year we have a wait list so that of students who are interested but did not get the aid. Sometimes students who are awarded work study may decide not to take it. Maybe they're studying abroad. Maybe they have a part-time job, or maybe they decide, I'm not going to work this year. I want to focus on studies. For whatever reason, they may decide not to use it. Well, then those funds are available for us to offer to other students. So make sure if you are interested, but you did not get it, let us know so that we can put you on our wait list.
All right, so our last question from the audience. When traveling abroad, do you have to pay extra, and do scholarships cover the cost of studying abroad?
There are extra costs involved with study abroad for travel expenses. So depending on where you're going, of course, your plane fare will be required. You have to, get yourself there and back. However, financial aid can cover your study abroad cost, because what happens is you're studying abroad, but you're paying tuition and fees to UNCG. So it's an exchange program. You're paying here, but you're studying there. So you don't have an increase in tuition and fees. You would be paying the same thing that you would for full-time enrollment on campus. There are some programs that also include housing. So those types of programs, you'd be charged housing here, and you would just be assigned a living assignment when you get to your study abroad location. In most cases, you're paying tuition and fees, and then you would have to secure housing once you arrived at your study abroad site. But in any case, financial aid can still cover that. It works the same as if you were living off campus. You would get the aid to cover your tuition and fees, and then what's not used to cover tuition and fees goes directly to you as a refund to use for those expenses. As far as travel is concerned, there are travel grants for students who are studying abroad. The Office of International Programs can give you more information about how those work, but typically you are offered a scholarship that would cover most of your transportation costs for your study abroad. And we also try to work with students to make sure that the cost of attendance can cover any other extra incidental fees. They're not a lot, but there are some. And we do work closely with the IPC Office, International Program Center, to make sure that our students are covered and make sure that you can have your study abroad expenses covered. Now, there also are other scholarships. The Gilman International Scholarship is an opportunity for students who are studying abroad to get grants or get a scholarship for in some cases up to $5,000, $8,000. So depending on which country you're going to be studying in, that's a wonderful opportunity to get some additional funds to help with your studies. In fact, the Gilman application just closed for the upcoming spring semester. There are lots of UNCG students who get these awards every year. I think we had about 20 students last year that received Gilman awards. So we do encourage you to look that up as the Benjamin Gilman Scholarship for International Study. And so definitely, yeah, there's funding available. The International Program Center has a link on their website for other scholarships for study abroad students. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there, lots of funds that can help you fund your study abroad semester or a year abroad, whichever you choose.
Excellent. So we have just a few minutes left. And so, Ms. Deborah, you were very integral in me being able to fund my college experience. So I want you to share some of that knowledge as some parting words as to what is your biggest piece of advice for those students such as myself and families that are going through this for the very first time. What would you tell them as we wrap up our live stream tonight?
Well, I can't stress enough, do the Fafsa. Do the application. Please don't be intimidated by what you've heard somebody else say, by somebody else's experience. Everybody's experience is unique. Your story is your story. Do the Fafsa. Do it early. There's a priority filing window of October 1st through January 15th, which means if you are an early filer within that time frame, you are more likely to get more of the need-based aid that you're eligible for before the funding runs out. There are limited funds. The state of North Carolina has a limited funding. They start funding as, they encourage you to file your FAFSA as soon as possible after October 1st. They fund up through the spring semester until their funds run out. So you don't want to be left out. Make sure that you're filing correctly, that you're entering your information accurately. And anytime you have a question, please call us, email us. Don't sit in darkness and not know what to do, because pride kept you from asking questions. Don't do that. Ask questions. File early, ask questions. File early, ask questions. Look for outside scholarships as well. Make sure you remember that applying for financial aid is done every year. You don't just do it once and it's done. You have to do this every year. So just mark your calendars. Every October, get started and get on it. Get situated. Set up your financial aid file and have everything ready to go every October so that you can be sure that you're not missing out on anything. I don't know, Kayla, what was the one thing that you did you think made you successful? I'm going to just put you on the spot here a little bit.
Well, definitely asking questions like you said. So I was unfamiliar with the process. I did have resources at my high school that were able to assist me with that FAFSA, and that was very important. So for those students that don't have, real quick, just for you to plug it one more time, what was the day and time for the Money Matters that you all are hosting?
Yes, we're doing Money Matters every Thursday in October. So we have a couple more. So this Thursday at 6 p.m. on Financial Aid Facebook Live, UNCG Financial Aid Office Facebook Live, we will have our team, our assistant director for electronic processing, the man who brings in the FAFSAs, who reads those things and looks at your file. He has all of the answers to your financial aid questions as it relates to completing the FAFSA. We will cover the data retrieval tool, verification, and special circumstances. Next week, October 22nd, we're going to cover FAFSA tips, some of the errors that we see made consistently and that may prevent students from going forward, that derail their progress, or that maybe slows things down. So we want to go through those. And then our last session on October 29th would be a checklist and a timeline on when you can expect things to happen. And it doesn't matter if you have questions in any of those sessions, it doesn't matter whether it's on topic or not. We encourage you to join us and ask those questions. You can also go online, go back to our website, our Facebook page, and see the previous videos that we did in the previous weeks. And they may help you answer some questions as well. Are you dependent or independent? Which parent to put on the FAFSA? So we did that last week. The week before, we talked about some checklist items that you need to have ready to get started with the FAFSA. So again, go back and check those out and join us this Thursday, 6 p.m. Facebook Live, Financial Aid Office.
Yes, so definitely use those resources. That's my biggest piece of advice. Miss Deborah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really was excited when I was told that I was going to get to do this with you. So I had an awesome time. I hope that you did too, and I hope that our audience learned a lot. Financial aid is very important, and so you shared your knowledge with us, and I couldn't thank you more. So thank you to everyone that did attend tonight. We will be back tomorrow evening covering more of our School of Education building. So if you're interested in one of those majors or a career in education, definitely recommend checking us out from 6 to 7 tomorrow evening. And over the next 3 weeks for the rest of our virtual fall open house, we have a lot of events going on. So be sure to check out our website and our social media accounts. And I'll look forward to seeing you again next week, Ms. Deborah, for our second session on financial aid.
I'll be here. Great to see you, to talk to you again, Caleb. Take care,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Take care, everyone.